Hello, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of Simplifying Real Estate, a monthly podcast series by Aris Uniturn. I'm your host, Rekha. In this series, we speak to seasoned developers and industry experts to find out what it takes to be successful in this very dynamic field of real estate. Today, as our esteemed guest, we have Mr. Adarsh Narahari, the Managing Director of Primus Lifespaces. He is the pioneer of senior community living in India. He is absolutely passionate about creating luxury senior living spaces in India, and he has traveled extensively across the world to find out the best practices across some of the best and successful retirement communities. We are very privileged to have him with us. Thank you, Adarsh, for being our guest. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rekha. It's my pleasure being here.
Great. So let's start. Let's dive right away to the very obvious question. You're very young. When it comes to senior living, the image that we have is someone who's middle aged and beyond. What inspired you to focus on senior living spaces?
So, Rekha, it's a funny story. Uh, I am brought up here in Bangalore, I'm very, very close to my grandmother. So, the credit actually for the idea should go to my grandmother. I'll give you a small story about how this whole thing unraveled, right? So, my grandmom has 11 siblings.
Wow.
So India has 1.3 billion people after all. So all of her siblings have children in the US, right? Very typical, educated, went abroad and settled abroad. So every time her sisters used to come home, they used to always ask that, my children are asking me to move to the US. Apparently there's something very special for elders in the US, which is not in India. And they didn't want to go there, like it's cold, and we don't know anybody there, we don't want to go. This was around the same time when I was looking to do something which is very different than traditional real estate. And then one day my grandmom called me and she said, "Hey, why don't you do something for my sisters? What is this so special that is there in the US that's not in India?" So that's the first time I actually went back to my room. I googled, because I didn't know better, I googled old age home USA, and then I realized that it's a very large business. It's a business of impact, and you can make a lot of positive change in people's lives. So that's when I decided to take a sabbatical from work. I traveled to US and around the world, and then I decided that that's my purpose. So that's how it started. The credit goes to my grandmother, and she was very, very crucial, very big part of me being brought up, because I was brought up by my grandmother a lot and my grandparents. So yeah, I owe it to her.
How inspiring and fascinating. Tell me about your family background. You come from a real estate background, or tell me about it.
Yes. So yes, very much from a real estate background. I'm a second generation entrepreneur, so to speak. Dad is first generation.
Yes.
Of course, he didn't come from any traditional wealth, or he didn't have some land that he was born with. He started his business when he was 36. So he used to work in a company called Mysore Paper Mills, and because he was upper caste, he didn't get promoted, so he quit out of frustration, and him and his partner started a real estate business. God has been kind, and then he did pretty well for himself. So yes, I'm second generation, but I was never lured by traditional real estate. It's a good business. There is money to be made, but there's nothing beyond money there, right? There is no, at least for me, there was no satisfaction. So that's how I ventured into senior living, which satisfaction is phenomenal. I don't know about the money. I guess that is something that I don't have to necessarily chase. So I have to be grateful, to be able to be in that position.
Very, very noble initiative. But tell me a little bit more about how do you cater to when it comes to senior living, creating senior living spaces. You have they will have different preferences, different needs. How do you cater to that changing demographics and dynamics?
Absolutely. So, when I got into this room, I saw this simplifying real estate. The first thing is that senior living is not real estate. And if anybody looks at it as a real estate business, that's probably not the business to be in, right? Senior living is a business of providing quality care for our customer. The real estate piece is incidental to that. A physical infrastructure is needed for an elder to be well taken care of. That's the relevance of real estate in this equation, right? So what we are a company that provides great quality of care to our elders. And again, now care can be divided into two aspects, right? One is care within the community in terms of design, and one is care that we give in terms of after completion, right? So if you look at design from the lens of real estate, what we really look for is we look for creating spaces that promote interaction, that promote reasons for people to come together to a common area. So we create larger common areas. We make the community safe from the lens of reducing the chance of somebody falling down, right? For example, if I asked you, what do you think is the number one reason for reduced mortality in elders? Would you know the answer?
Fall.
So that's the number two reason, right?
Okay.
So the biggest cause is loneliness, and the second one is falls, right? So what we're really doing is we're solving for that. We're solving for loneliness, we're solving for falls, and we're overlaying a preventive healthcare management plan on top of that. Let me try to break up some of these things. People don't understand loneliness again in India. They feel that if a person is in a joint family, they're not lonely. That's not true. Or if an elderly person is unwell and if a caregiver provides a nurse, that doesn't mean that the loneliness aspect is addressed, because the nurse is only going to make the elder dependent on him or her. But there is no promotion of quality of conversation or use of the mind.
True.
So this loneliness factor is something that we all need to watch out for in our elders, right? So being in a community, we take away loneliness because everything is about getting together with friends. You come down for breakfast, you're sitting with friends. Then we have a events team. The events team runs activities throughout the day. So there's always something, somebody like music, somebody like dance, somebody liked craft, somebody liked teaching. Like we have a person who's 87 who's learned and is teaching French. His name is Mr. Shank Srinivas. So there are so many such stories. So in fact, we are all celebrating landing the moon. The ex-director of ISRO actually is one of our residents. It's so proud. A lot of residents watched it live, yesterday in our community, and we were celebrating having the director with us. So things like that, right? We are very different from a real estate piece. I want to also a little bit talk to you about the medical care side of how we take care of things. What do we all do as in medical care? We are all reactive. Matlab,
Yes.
if something goes wrong, we go to a doctor
Correct.
and then we're prescribed some medicines. These medicines treat our symptoms.
Yes.
They don't, treat the core of the disease. And we forget the doctor until the next time something goes wrong. But at Primus, what we do is, we have partnered with a company called Bridge Health, where we have developed a unique proactive healthcare management plan. What do I mean by this word proactive, right? The idea here is to try to find things before they go wrong. So we schedule tests quarterly, annually, once in 6 months, such that we are able to find markers of things before they go wrong. Think of, like if you do a CT angio once a year, we can prevent a heart attack. If you do an oncology test once in a year and you catch cancer in stage 1, it can be cured, without losing somebody. If you think about memory loss, you catch it, dementia in stage 1, we can give active memory for 5 to 7 more years. Think of knee replacement surgeries, right? It's so common, but nobody's asking, why did I need to change my knee? Through physiotherapy, you didn't need a knee replacement surgery. Just if somebody had done a test on the body's composition and understand the knee strength, and through physiotherapy, a surgery would have been fully avoided. We are very happy to go pay 5 lakhs and say, I got my knee from Germany, but it was never needed. So that's what I mean by preventive healthcare plan, because we have these tests. So, when a resident moves into our community, we do a medical assessment and we do a physiotherapy assessment. So in the medical assessment, we'll be looking at things like their history of medication, history of surgeries, any other current medication, allergies, and their previous blood tests. So based on their medical history, we put them in a particular risk bucket. Okay, are they low risk, medium risk, or high risk? Similarly, on the physiotherapy, we do an assessment on the overall body. What are the strengths in the hips? What are the strengths in the arms? What's the strength in the knee? What is their balance? How much weight do they put on which leg? What is the chance of this person falling down? We do a physiotherapy risk profile. Together, we do something called a health score. And what is core to our business is we actually improve this health score with time. So the target to our medical team is, okay, if a person was in medium risk, how do you bring them to low risk? If a person was in high risk, how do you bring them to medium risk? So that's what we do really differently, right? The building is very incidental to our business. It's not core to our business. Because we're able to give this kind of a care, and then we create this community where everything is taken care of. You don't have to worry about cooking, you don't have to worry about cleaning, you don't have to worry about who showed up, who didn't show up. So people can actually focus on things that they love. We had a lot of people taking up hobbies, which, this generation of elderly that we cater to are the ones that were straddled between the two generations, right?
Yes.
They took care of their elders,
Yes.
they brought up their children, they never focused on themselves.
True.
Nobody said, hey, what about you? What do you want to do? Especially the women of the house, especially. Somehow that generation of women were all expected to be superwomen. Take care of the house, manage the parents, manage the in-laws, manage the kids. Your needs, your passions can, take a back seat. So we see a lot of people now focusing on themselves.
Wonderful.
Focusing on their passions, which we want to encourage. And we create this community where they don't need to worry about running a house.
Yeah.
And they get to hang with friends, So that's how it's very different from real estate.
Wonderful. Tell me about your, Pride project. What has been your experience and what makes it special?
So this entire business is special,
Special.
Rekha. Like I told you, if you build a traditional apartment, right? You would build, yes, you provide value to a consumer, they buy the unit, but after that, that relationship ends.
Yes.
Now they are grateful to the developer for giving a good home and creating a safe space for them. But there is no continuous feedback and interaction per se. But in a senior home, what happens is once we provide a home, then we are giving services for life. So the satisfaction and the gratitude that we get from our elders, that cannot be measured. No amount of money, could measure the love and the gratitude that we get from our elders.
What has been some of the challenges? I'm sure there would have been many learnings through those challenges too.
So Rekha, we started this business in the year 2013. So we were one of the very early entrants into this space. Obviously, everybody thought what we do is a old age home with a
Yes.
fancy name called senior living, right?
Yes.
I think our first challenge was to surpass the mind
Mindset.
block of a lot of children around the world. We found through our own experience and research that the elders are actually way more open-minded than their children are, right? And this probably applies a lot more to children who are not in the same country. Because they may have moved out from India, much earlier. So the idea of India may be still from the past. So one of our key challenges was to make people understand that this is a lifestyle option, which is better for everybody, and it's just easier. It's not an old age home. It's not like children and parents don't get along. It's not like they are somehow neglected in some way or they are not financially independent. Everything is contrary to that.
Correct.
We have super successful people who have a lot of wealth who choose to live with us. They could have 5 servants at home. They don't want that because that is not what makes them happy. It's not a function of affordability. And we have seen that our residents have better relationship with their children because there is quality of conversation. Because we may have noticed a lot of times that having your elderly in your same physical space doesn't mean we are promoting quality interaction. It just means that an elderly is in a physical space.
True.
And that's been one of our primary challenges. If I have to think of other challenges, the policy in India also doesn't exist to promote this business. If you look at the global market for senior living, what typically happens is an elderly person, before they move into a retirement community, mortgages or reverse mortgages their previous home and then moves into a community. So they don't need a new source of liquidity to make that investment in a senior living home, right? The reverse mortgage market in India doesn't exist, or the way that the rules are made currently, wherein the resident is expected to stay in the house at the reverse mortgage. It works contrary to, what is the purpose that it's supposed to achieve. There are things like that. There is issues around health insurance for elders, right? If you're above 60 and you want to go get an insurance, it's very expensive. GST on services. The person earns for 60 years and then now we're taking care of them, through various services, food, medical, yada yada yada. And then there's an 18% GST on that. That pinches them. So there are and also on the real estate side, there is no zoning framework of rules, regulations. So there are a lot of things that the country needs to catch up on, which it will happen eventually, as the market grows. So those have been some of the challenges. It's the lack of understanding of what we do, as well as the regulatory framework to support it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about the mindset, shift that has to happen. I think you started a decade earlier, and there is a long way to go. What are some of the ways in which we can actually normalize this, if I can ask that question? Because I think...
Well, it's, everything will happen with the references of people who are living in these communities, right? The best way to answer this question is not a company like me going and putting a billboard saying this is not an old age home. That doesn't solve the problem. Is to make the voice of my resident the voice of my community.
Correct.
Come and meet my residents. Are these people who are successful? Are these people who are happy? Do they have good relationship with their children? Are they financially stable? Okay, then you feel like, okay, if this person can be here, maybe I should be here too. Right? What was the motivation for these people to come and live with us? Right? We have extremely successful people from all around the country who are our residents, and like I said, it's a for choice community. So I think that's probably the only way. I'm not sure if there's any other way, and some of the other ways could be through understanding what is this market around the world, because India is a little behind when it comes to these kind of things. For example, 6% of the population above 60 in the US stays in a formal retirement community. About 10% in Japan stays in a formal retirement community. About 8% in Australia stays, right? So if you have to extrapolate that, those numbers are very big for India. India has 130 million elders. India has 40 or 50 lakh upper middle class urban elders. So even if you take out 10% of that, right, that's like 4 lakh homes. So the demand is massive. It is going to be massive. And what really changed the dynamics of our business is actually COVID.
Okay.
Funnily enough, what COVID did is it taught elders that, listen, if you're in a home, you're cooped up, you're not allowed to go out, and it's just you and your spouse, and you're expected to watch TV for 8 hours a day. That's very bad for your health. So Rekha, in your own experience, you may have observed, you may not have met some elderly people for 1 or 2 years because of COVID. At the end of that period, now you met them. You saw that there were a group of people who looked exactly how they looked earlier, or even looked younger, and probably there were a group of people who looked like they aged 10 years in 2 years. Have you ever wondered what may be the reason for that?
I'm sure the loneliness and the fear and the depression that would have set in.
Right. So some of those factors, primarily it is lack of using the mind and lack of keeping the body active and not having a community or a social interaction. These are actually factors that increase the process of aging. So what we do is we bring down the process of aging and we improve quality of life. So keeping people on their feet for longer. So COVID taught a whole bunch of elders that, listen, I can't be cooped up, then my maid doesn't show up, my cook doesn't show up, I am expected to do jhadu, I am expected to cook now at 70, it's not happening, right? So after COVID, the demand for us went up exponentially, because people realized that it's not sustainable, and then they needed to be in the community. So when COVID happened, we locked our gates, we moved in all our stuff, we tested everybody, and then life within our compound was normal. 3 times a day people used to eat together. There used to be a lot of events. Somebody lost $500 in Rummy. They used to call their friends who were sitting in Jayanagar or JP Nagar, cooped up in their house, hey, I lost $500 to my friend, and that's when okay, I need to move in here, and we had nothing to sell. So COVID kind of educated people about it, like how work from home became a thing after COVID. I think elders realized that a traditional home is not sustainable for them in the long run.
I'm intrigued to ask this. What about residents who have come in and they develop some kind of lifestyle or life-threatening diseases? How do you take care of that?
So, absolutely, it's a very good question. When we get a resident, like I told you, we do a medical assessment. So, we already know if there is any condition that is existing in the resident, right? So, we develop care plan for each of our residents when they move in. When I told you high risk, medium risk and low risk, each of these risk buckets have a particular care plan. So high risk, a resident of ours, the doctor would visit every day. The doctor would take certain parameters every day. A low risk, the doctor may go once a month to say hi, right? So one is we're able to better manage that. Two is we're able to ramp up our care based on their condition. So if somebody requires a full-time nurse, we'll provide a full-time nurse. If somebody requires us to consult a hospital nearby and keep moving them back and forth based on their condition, we'll do all of that. The advantage we have is we know everything about our customer. So there is no surprises, right? Surprises when you wake up and somebody's gone someday. That never happens in a community because we already know what's happening with each of our residents.
You recently moved to Mumbai market. Tell me about it and also your association with Adarsh Uniturn.
Absolutely. So, like I said, post-COVID, the surge in demand for senior living went up, right? And we did something which was again very pioneering. We were the first to do that. We started to move into intergenerational housing communities.
Okay.
Now, what is an intergenerational housing community, right? So, if there is a project of say 10 towers of 20 acres or whatever, right? And out of 10 towers, a developer can typically not launch all the 10 or 20 at one shot simply because of the cash flow, sales cycle, so on and so forth. So we started to meet developers and we said, hey, why don't we do one tower as senior living? I will attract the parents and the in-laws. We will help you attract the kids. And the services that we give, right? Food, medical, housekeeping, concierge, events, laundry, so on and so forth. We'll open out to the whole community. This way, we are creating an emotional reason for a person to come and buy here, right? So if a child comes, we'll be like, okay, what about your parents and in-laws? Why don't you buy here? If a parent comes, we'll be like, why don't you ask your kid to buy here? So this is, and the services can be offered on a per use basis to the rest of them. If somebody's cook doesn't show up, if somebody's maid doesn't show up, Primus will give service to all of them, right? So this is an idea that was an instant hit. And people understood the value of creating intergenerational as opposed to standalone, because then that developer differentiates themselves. For us, it was nicer because families can live together, but in India's new context, right? Like the nuclearization rate, what would you say is the number in India right now? How many families do you think are nuclear in India as we speak?
I think almost 80%. I wouldn't know.
That's probably true for urban India,
Yes.
but at an India level, we are already 60% nuclear.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to tell you is that now the norm is for families to stay apart, not stay in a joint family.
Right.
So we felt like, this is a thing which is very India focused, that you get to be together but apart. Okay, my dad and mom are in that tower. I'm in this tower, so that my kid after school, he goes and spends time with my parents, right?
Yes.
And we started curating those activities as well. And that's how this idea came about. And Adarsh Uniturn was instrumental in getting us into Bombay. So they put us in touch with Mr. Vijay Wadhwa, who's the chairman of the Wadhwa group. And we were told that he's very passionate too about senior living, which now I can vouch for. And Adarsh Uniturn, set up this this partnership. They helped all the me and Mr. Vijay understand the value that we bring to each other, and we found that all of us here actually work from our heart. So we don't put an Excel sheet in front of us and make our decisions. We keep the customer in front, and we made the decision, which is why our partnership has been very successful. The launch has been very successful, and we were thrilled to bring senior living to Bombay.
Tell me about the future. I mean, what lies ahead and how do you continue to enrich the services to senior living?
Absolutely. So, from a service standpoint, Rekha, we are very different from anybody else. There are few fundamental things that makes us different from a facility management company or from a hospitality provider, right? We are somewhere between a hotel, a hospital and a home. I'll give you a few examples. One, we keep every single person on our rolls. We do not outsource anything except security. The Mali, the dishwasher, the chef, the doctor, everybody on my rolls. Okay. The reason is very simple. For example, if my housekeeper is on my rolls, I expect my housekeeper to know everything about my resident.
Yes.
When I go to the community, I would go and ask them, hey, 301, I want to know the grandchild's name. Does this grandchild like Kit Kat or they like Perk?
Wow.
Does the lady of this house like Lysol or Harpic? I expect you to know every intricate detail of my resident because I am promoting quality of conversation. I am not measuring turnaround time. I am not telling my housekeeping staff, this is the house, you need to clean this in 10 minutes. No. This is the house, you need to know everything about my resident. I want you to be welcomed with a smile every morning, and I want you to spend 15 minutes chatting with them about whatever you choose to chat about. But you have to chat with them. I will measure that. I will not measure turnaround time. So everything is different like that. If you come and look at our restaurant, we have a buffet system, but we do not make an elaborate 20, 30 different items. We make 3 versions of the same item. Let me explain what I mean, right? If we make dal, for example, or say rice, we'll have boiled rice, regular one, we'll have brown rice, and we'll have semi-viscous rice. Okay. So depending on each person's personal preference, dal will be one with tadka, one will be bina tadka wala dal. If I make palak paneer, we'll keep the paneer separately, and we'll have 2 gravies. One is tadka wala, bina tadka, and then the paneer will be tossed based on who's in front of him. Because we know, okay, Mr. Rao likes paneer fat, thin, number of pieces. We know everything about our resident. So we have customized our menu based on our current set of residents. That's what differentiates us, which is why we are proud to say we have the highest F&B subscription in the industry at 98%. 98% of my residents have subscribed for our food, right? And even the 2% is because of a medical need, not because of, they're not happy with our food. So that's how we're very different in our services. Every aspect of our service, every aspect of our training is very different from any other company, which is what I think is the reason why our residents are happy, right? So the future is clearly in giving high quality service. The future in my mind is a combination of standalone and intergenerational housing. And I think the future is also in doing for rent lease based communities, right? And as we grow this business, we need to be able to take care of both ends of this funnel, right? What do I mean by that? We're taking care primarily of happy, active adults right now. When we go through the next decade, some of them may require much more advanced care. So we see ourselves getting into assisted living, doing dementia care, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's care, ortho, neuro, certain rehabilitation conditions. We also see ourselves doing daycare centers, so that we can take care of elders who don't want to necessarily move into a community, but they're already in their own neighborhood. So the idea is to kind of tap into this pie and make sure we can impact more elders.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now that some of the questions we covered were the professional, aspect of Adarsh as a person. I wanted to know about you as a family man. How do you unwind? Tell me about that.
So I am a very outdoorsy person.
Okay.
I am not your typical extremely social who wants to go to parties. Not very fond of that. So you would see me cycling a lot. So I love to cycle. I love to hike.
Huh.
So I like to camp. So anything that involves me being with nature is where my heart is.
Wonderful.
So that's pretty much it. I'm an endurance cyclist. So that's how I unwind. And pretty much any adventure activity is what I crave for.
And you love traveling too.
Of course, everybody loves traveling. I'm no exception to that. So I love traveling as well. So that's a great way to unwind with the family. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to come to the end, we have a small, fun, rapid fire question just to get to know others. As what are your likes and dislikes? Very simple, fun question. So the first one is Bollywood versus Hollywood.
Bollywood.
Amitabh Bachchan, Rajnikant.
Rajnikant.
Wonderful. Tea or coffee?
Tea at home, coffee outside.
Cricket or tennis?
Tennis.
Wonderful. Android or iPhone?
Android all the way.
All the way. This I think I know. Adventure sports or relaxing spa?
Adventure sports, anytime.
And the last one, reading or podcast?
Probably podcast. I'm not a very good reader, so I like to listen to stuff. So I listen to books also. So yeah, podcast.
Yeah, that's a wrap. So you did. Thank you so much, Adarsh, for being with us and sharing with us the insights about what you're trying to do. It's, I think, such a fascinating concept, so much needed. I have a parent, an aged parent, and I keep looking for ways to kind of, make him happy. And, the demographics, especially in the urban space, is also changing, right? They're affluent. They want to have a good quality life.
Absolutely.
And they demand for it. And, and so whatever Primus is doing is something which is the need of the hour too, if I could say so.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
actually, I do want to add one more thing
Yes.
for our listeners,
Yes.
right? Because all of us, most of us have parents with us.
Correct.
And we, both the husband and wife are kind of responsible for their own parents as well. My request is a couple of things. One is, please do not discount the value of just being disciplined in doing tests for our elders, right? So please find a way in which, especially things like oncology, CT, angio, mental health tests, these kind of things have to be done on a regular basis. Also, a simple blood test, right, and a physiotherapy assessment. I think please do this irrespective of where you are, what you do for a living. It's very important that we get our parents and encourage them to be conscious of their health, because if we can find things earlier, we'll be able to treat it without any kind of hospitalization. That's the first thing. The second thing I also want to add is to encourage everybody's parent or the elder, if the elder is listening, to read this book called Ikigai. Okay, it's a book that was written by a Japanese researcher on a blue zone, right? So a blue zone is a community or a village in which the majority of the population lives above the age of 100. So like Okinawa in Japan, in Sao Paulo, in Puerto Rico, a whole bunch of places. And the Japanese researcher, found 6 common traits between people in all of these regions, right? People don't eat the same food, they don't have the same social life, they have different genetic pool, but still everybody lived above 100. And those 6 things were, he found that people who are physically active. 2, they ate only 70% of their stomach's capacity. 3, they had a sense of purpose. 4, there was a sense of community. 5, they were mentally active, they used their mind. And 6 is they interact with nature.
Wow.
So what we try to do at Primus is we try to give these 6 things to all our residents, in the hope that we can keep everybody with us above 100. But it's a great life philosophy for everybody to follow, right? Be active, surround yourself by friends, keep yourself mentally active, physically active, and watch what you eat, and test yourself regularly. So yeah, I just wanted to tell that, because I truly believe that is very, very important for our elders.
Thank you. I think that's the best takeaway for our audience today. So, audience, we just heard Adarsh speak about how we can actually make life better for our parents and seniors. I think that was such a useful and great conversation to have. So keep listening to us if you like to hear, such wonderful stories about, real estate as well as making living better. So we are here at Aris Uniturn to simplify real estate for you. Keep listening to us and do not forget to like and subscribe our channel.